The T-34, the tank that forced Hitler to redesign war. German arrogance. In June 1941, the Wehrmacht was invincible. Its panzer divisions had crushed Poland, defeated France, and humiliated Britain. The Blitzkrieg was the most perfect military doctrine ever conceived. When they launched Operation Barbarossa, the plan to conquer the Soviet Union, Hitler's officers were convinced they would face a primitive enemy with obsolete tanks, like the old T-20 SIXS. But on the vast, muddy plains of the Eastern Front, German soldiers were about to encounter a steel ghost. An angular beast that completely ignored their projectiles. This was not the enemy they expected. The first encounters were devastating to German morale. The T-34 was a radical design, so secret that even Stalin was not fully aware of its capabilities. The standard German anti-tank weapon, the 37mm Pak-36, was known as the door knocker. When fired at the T-34s, the effect was desperate. Testimony, referenced from research. Our 37mm shots ricocheted off the T-34's armor at over 300 meters. They didn't penetrate, they just flew off to the sides. On one occasion, a single T-34 took 23 hits and kept moving. General Heinz Guderian, the architect of the Blitzkrieg, sent urgent reports to Berlin demanding an immediate analysis. They realized they were using a lightning war doctrine with obsolete armament. The T-34's secret was not just its 76mm cannon, but its sloped armor. A 45mm plate, sloped at 60 degrees, offered the same ballistic protection as a vertical plate of nearly 300mm. This outperformed anything Germany could face. Furthermore, it used a V2 diesel engine which was less prone to catching fire than German gasoline engines. It was faster and better suited for the mud of the Eastern Front. The T-34 was the future of tank design. However, the Soviet technological advantage came with an immense human cost. The T-34 was not perfect. It was a revolutionary design, but rudimentary and plagued with issues. Problem number 1, the two-man turret. Unlike the Panzers with 3 crew members in the turret, the Soviet commander had to act as commander, gunner, and sometimes loader. This meant the commander was constantly tied to the gun, with zero situational awareness. He could not spot the enemies trying to flank them. Problem number 2, mechanical reliability. The crash gearbox was notoriously difficult to operate. Crews, recruited with little training, often struggled to shift gears. Testimony, referenced from research. The crash gearbox made shifting gears hard work, and drivers carried a sledgehammer for when it got stuck. Breakdowns were so common that some crews carried spare transmissions on the back of the tank. Problem number 3, the mobile tomb. Early models had a heavy, single turret hatch. If the tank was hit, the chance of escape was minimal. Initial Soviet losses were terrible, despite the tank's superiority. In the first battles of Barbarossa, a quarter of the T-34s disappeared with no influence on the fighting, due to technical problems and lack of training. Stalin understood that to win the war, quantity, not perfection, was needed. After the initial collapse, the order was given to move thousands of factories eastward, beyond the reach of the Luftwaffe's bombing raids. The city of Chelyabinsk became Tankograd, the tank capital of the world. The goal was to simplify the T-34 design for mass production. The T-34 was stripped down. Complex components were removed, welding was simplified, and materials were prioritized. The manufacturing time was drastically reduced. The victory statistic, referenced from research, note the difference in T-34 production: 1941, 3,014 units. 1942, 12,553 units. 1943, 15,812 units. While German engineers struggled to build a few hundred perfect Tigers, the Soviets were flooding the Eastern Front with tens of thousands of T-34s. Quantity became a quality in its own right. This massive production capacity allowed the Red Army to withstand brutal battles like Stalingrad and later, triumph in the largest tank clash in history. The T-34's success forced Germany to react. Their answer was the heavy tanks Tiger I and Panther. By 1943, the original T-34, the /76, was outmatched at long range. The Flak 88 anti-aircraft cannon, repurposed as an anti-tank weapon, was the only thing consistently capable of penetrating the T-34's frontal armor. Once again, the USSR had to adapt. The solution was the T-34-85, the definitive version. Key improvements, referenced from research: the /85 mounted an 85mm cannon and, crucially, a new 3-man turret that finally solved the commander's workload problems. The T-34-85 was not technically superior to the Panther, but it was still easier to produce, easier to maintain, and most importantly, could be manufactured on a scale the Germans could never match. The T-34 became the weapon that won the war. It was the iron fist that, with each new version, punched harder and harder, pushing the Germans back to Berlin. The T-34 is the symbol of the Soviet victory. It was the tank that surprised the Germans, the one that forced the design of new tanks, and ultimately, the one that proved that, in total war, production capacity can be the most decisive factor. Its design continued to influence a generation of post-war tanks. This cream bun, as its crews called it due to the bumps and noise, was the vehicle of victory. From a secret design riddled with flaws, to the most produced war machine in history. The T-34 did not just change the course of World War II, it forever changed how a tank is designed.